This is the 21st season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, Aftco, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. In less than 72 hours after 22-year-old Easton Fothergill became the first Minnesotan to lift the Bassmaster Classic trophy over his head, did so in record-setting fashion this past Sunday afternoon on Lake Ray Roberts to the tune of 76 pounds, 15 ounces. We have him live on BTL to kick off a Wednesday. Easton, first of all, congratulations, and thank you for returning to BTL, your second appearance on the show, to talk about all things Lake Ray Roberts and the biggest win of your career.
Thanks for having me again, man. This is awesome.
First of all, what have the last 2.5 days been like since you lifted the trophy? Just walk us through that moment after the ride around with your family. Like, what do you do Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, lead into this? I mean, kind of looks like you're in, does not look like you're home. Are you?
I am home. Yeah.
Oh, you are home.
This is my bedroom.
Is that? I figured that may be your trophy room in the near future.
Maybe. But it's very plain, as you can see.
All right, walk us through those like 54 hours.
Yeah. So after we won the Classic, we had all the media stuff to take care of, the press conference, and then we did the Champions Toast, which was super cool. A lot of people that I was looking up to for my whole life came up to me, and we talked and took pictures, and super cool moment for me. And then after that, I was so exhausted, I just went to bed. Like, I didn't go out, do nothing. After the toast, I went to bed, got back to the Airbnb at like 1 a.m, I think. And then, got up the next morning, did some more interviews I'm shooting the Kings of Bass with the Strike King crew this year. So we did some closing out interviews this year. On Monday morning, we closed.
That was a good decision to do that with you this year. I know they bounce back and forth between Opens and Elite Series guys, so that was a solid pick on the old Strike King part.
Yeah. And all week, they told me after the event that they got every single fish catch for the Classic on the big cam and the slow-mo cam, every hook set and every fish catch. So that show is going to be unbelievable when it comes out. I can't wait. But after that, I took my girlfriend to the airport, got packed up, and I drove home to Alabama, where I'm at right now. Got here at like 1 a.m, I think. Slept, and then got up and did interviews all day yesterday, and it's looking about the same today. A lot of interviews, some podcasts, and it's very hectic for someone like me, someone who likes to keep to himself and that sort of thing. But it's completely worth it. I love it.
You mentioned that you got to meet a lot of the guys that you looked up to at the Champions Toast. Who do you look up to? Who have you looked up to? Who was there that it was kind of a surreal moment?
So my two idols growing up were always Aaron Martins and Brandon Polnick. Those are the two anglers that I've idolized the most through my childhood. And, Brandon came up. He was one of the first ones to come up to me. He sent me some short text messages all week during the Classic, just like one bite at a time, stay focused, that sort of thing, just to help keep me composed, which was super cool for me to have him do that. Just such a stand-up guy. And, I really admire him for not only the angler, but just the person he is, that he's someone that I strive to try to be. So definitely super cool to have those guys, to look up to.
Would you say that you model your fishing a little bit after Amart then? If you mentioned Amart, I know he passed. You were right in high school and early college fishing with Amart, but you mentioned that, and then we watch you fish on Bassmaster Live in the Open that you won on Eufaula, the Open that you won on Leech Lake, and then in this Bassmaster Classic. And there does seem to be a bit of a similarity in styles and the way you approach the water.
Yeah, any video that I can find of Amart, I've really studied it. And, I've really tried to learn everything I can from Amart just because, he was a master at what he did. And I guess for me, my fishing style, I try to combine what he did and what KVD did. I try to, I guess the best way to put it is I try to power fish with a spinning rod is, kind of my style. I guess that's usually what I end up doing is fishing extremely fast with a spinning rod, hitting lots of targets, that sort of thing. So I guess that's kind of the best way you can put my fishing style is a mix between KVD and Amart.
Have you gone back and watched when Kevin Van Dam won on Smith Mountain Lake?
I don't think so.
It was the first time that we had heard the term. I want to say it was late 2010s power finesse, and he won on Smith Mountain in Clearwater, hitting targets as fast as he could, but slowed down and caught them all on an 1/8 ounce shaky head with a finesse worm on a spinning rod. And at the time, that was, it wasn't that long ago, but at the time that was like revolutionary stuff. Here's Kevin, who is usually cranking and stuff. Here he is with a spinning rod, just target. And that's kind of when the phrase, the power finesse fishing style was founded. I guess that's what you would say you are. You're a power finesse angler.
Yeah, that sounds like Easton Fothergill to a T is what you just said.
That's fantastic. How many text messages do you have on your phone right now?
I knocked a lot of them out late last night, but
like how many would you say as a whole?
There was 460 notifications when I started knocking them out last night.
Oh my gosh! And you have no manager?
No.
You have no team?
No.
You have. I mean, it's Easton Fothergill in his bare room just answering text messages.
Yeah. I mean, the last 2 days is the first time I've honestly ever used a calendar. Like I got all my interviews in a calendar, and it's I'm doing my best to stay as organized as I can through all this, and it's all good.
Are you enjoying it so far? Is it stressful? I know you mentioned you said you like to stay to yourself. You've done a lot of interviews, especially over the last several years. There's already some people in the comments that are like, dude, Easton's gotten so much better at this from the very beginning. But just walk through the mental and physical and emotional side of everybody, BTL included. I know you've got a bunch of other interviews lined up. Once some of your time.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I guess it's not my personality to do stuff like this, but like I said, it's completely worth it. And I'm so happy to, have the opportunity to do this. Like, for example, the Champions Toast, I'm standing at a podium with the trophy in front of all these people, and I know they're all looking at me. I was kind of freaking out up there. I'm not going to lie. But I'm just so grateful that I do have the opportunity to do this after the week that I had. So, I mean, it's all good, and I'll get better with it for sure.
Do you have any recollection of like what you said or anything, or is that just all kind of a blur at this point?
Not at all. Like, especially on Bass Live, when I had those fish catches, I had to go because I blacked out when I caught some of those fish. I had to go back and figure out, rewatch what I said.
All right. Really cool human element side to this story yesterday. I don't want to run through it now, but I went through your timeline from August 10th, 2023 to March 24th, 2025. Absolutely insane. And when you kind of break it down, not only from the human side to the physical and that side, through the college to the opens to winning to the first classic to making the elite series to fishing the elite series to winning this Bassmaster Classic, I would have to imagine the last 18 months, you're going to look back when you're 75 years old and be telling your grandkids about 2023, 2024, and 2025 about how much that kind of formed and shaped you as a human being. Fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've learned, obviously, I've had a lot of success fishing, but on top of that, I've learned so much about life after some of those things I had, go on with me. I was able to step back and just really realize, how grateful you have to be for everything in life. And, that's honestly the biggest reason why I've had the success I've had, truthfully. I mean, I'm just grateful to even be there when I show up to a tournament. There's just never any stress anymore, really. I mean, it's just, just happy to even be there.
All right, let's talk fishing. You want to talk a little bit fishing?
Yeah.
So I'm old. I've been covering this almost as long as you've been alive. Not really. What year were you born? You're a 2000s baby, right?
'02.
Yeah. So I started, my first classic was '08. And it used to be, well, history here. It was all about the bait and it was all about the pattern. And this was before live. And, that bait is then what became the signature, which is how you make your money, so on and so forth. And the pictures of it. And then, once live happened and now it seems like the actual nuts and bolts of it kind of get lost in the bigger picture, especially with all the live there is there. So I want to walk through, let's do a deep dive into the tournament, the fighting of the fish, the catching, the baits, that whole thing. You good with that?
Yeah.
All right. What was the practice like? I know how much you like to put in. I know the legendary stories of you that you've literally graphed every inch on Leech Lake. You're a man of preparation. Was that frustrating going into those 3 official practice days with the conditions that you faced wind-wise?
Yeah, it was. I mean, so I came to this lake and I pre-practiced in early December for 4 days, I believe. And with that, the biggest thing I wanted to do is just figure out how to navigate the timber just so I could be more efficient when we came back. And, I was able to accomplish that. And then on top of that, I was able to find 2 areas I felt like had really good populations of fish. So coming back for the pre-practice or whatever they call it for the Classic, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I was going to start in those zones, hopefully relocate those 2 populations of fish, find kind of, how far along they are with the pre-spawn stages, or maybe even they're on the bank. I didn't know. And then from there, I was hoping I'd be able to duplicate that on the rest of the lake. And, it didn't take long. Those fish weren't very far from where I left them early December. They were just a little bit, further into the pockets, a little more, your classic pre-spawn stage. And then from there, I was able to just kind of bounce around and, just hopefully, or I just bounce around and find other areas that hopefully set up like that, which I was able to do. And I would say one of the biggest keys for me is I was watching the weather like a hawk all week, watching the wind directions for the tournament, because I wanted to be able to, fish efficiently with any wind direction that could be thrown at me in the tournament. And so I tried all week. It was showing a hard south wind the first 2 days and then a north or northwest wind on the final day. So I was doing my best to prepare that as best as I possibly could, which, I was able to do. So I think that's one of the biggest keys for me throughout the whole
Those
week.
areas where you located them in pre-practice, you said they weren't that far from it. I mean, it was 60-mile-an-hour winds, a literal blackout dust storm. We saw the conditions of the official practice day on Wednesday, and then also primarily the first couple of days of the Classic as well. Did it just work out to where those happened to be somewhat protected that you could get to and fish in, to where there weren't 5 and 6 foot rollers through that timber?
Yeah, there was
Really
one of the, I mean, the zone where I ended up catching them day 1 and then some on day 3 was protected by that, 70-mile-an-hour wind. So I was able to go in there, and I don't remember what the creek's called, but all my areas were on the east arm. And I was able to just ride that west side of the east arm, just, stick close to the shoreline and get in there and, relocate those fish. But it was definitely, even in practice, you had to be strategic. Like, we have a southwest wind. I'm gonna look at these pockets, and then, there's a straight south wind. I'll be able to look at these. It was just, normally I'm a type person, I put the boat in, I have no clue where I'm going to go, like just keep an open mind and run. But with this practice, I definitely had to plan things out a little more than I normally do with the wind, the extreme wind we had all week.
Did grass or a shallow bite play into your game plan at all, or did you go in there wanting to fish the way that you ended up eventually fishing?
I weighed a couple fish out of the grass, but for me, those pockets and stuff that had the good milfoil in the back were key, but I wasn't fishing the milfoil. I was intercepting them in front of the milfoil. But that grass in those pockets was definitely key to my deal. It seemed like I didn't have near the success if the back of those pockets I was fishing did not have grass.
So you think those fish were pre-spawn fish that were setting up to within days move up shallow and start spawning in those areas with grass?
I believe so, yeah.
Really? So you would intentionally seek out where those pockets with grass were, but then not fish the grass.
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's those creeks with the grass were just so much more lively than the ones without grass. So
you were around Livesey some and some of the other guys in the top 10. You were just out from them, so they could turn around and look and see you, and you could look in and see them pretty much for the whole tournament.
Yep, for the most part, yep.
Did you know going into day one that you were going to be a player in this classic?
I felt like there was a good chance because I'd caught some big fish in practice. I was just really stressed out about catching 5 a day because only one day of the pre-practice and official practice I was able to catch 5. But, you know, I say that and you catch a big one, put a waypoint and pull the trolling motor up. Like, I really didn't know what I was on until I kind of uncovered it in the tournament.
How many did you catch that first day? You came in, you had 24-15. Trey McKinney was leading with 26-9. Corey Johnson was in second with 25-9. And then, God, look at that. You had Trey, you, and Jay were 1, 3, and 4. And then the two guys behind you, Lee Livesey with 23 and John Cox with 22. I mean, it was pretty apparent after that first day that this thing was going to be one of two ways. What was that first day like? How many keepers did you put in the box? And were you happy, even though you're a pound and a half behind Trey McKinney, were you happy with where you were after day one?
I was extremely happy with where I was at. The first day I had 8 bites, landed 6 keepers. So, you know, that was basically exactly how I was hoping my day would go. I knew I wasn't going to get many bites, but, you know, it went as like exactly as planned.
You touched this, who is that? Lincoln asked here, he goes, were you actually trying to catch during practice? So how many, what you would say, that's a bass that I would like to catch? How many did you see as opposed to how many you had bit? And then you were 6 for 8 on the hook to land ratio on day one. But was this a deal where you were seeing a lot of fish that you couldn't get to commit, or you couldn't get a bait through them for the timber, or were you going long periods without even seeing bass?
It was, I would say, let's see. The first day of tournament, I was looking at a bass most of the day. They were just they were not committing to me. So the first day it was kind of, you know, dark skies and extremely windy the first day, and it had them pasted on the bottom. Like, I mean, they were like any stump, rock pile, or anything, they were like glued to the structure. So for one, they were hard to see, and two, you know, I'd throw my stuff over there, and a lot of the times they wouldn't even move on it. So they were just acting extremely weird that day. So I was only able to get, you know, 8 bites, and, you know, I was around a lot of fish for sure.
Do you think you were able to target fish on the bottom because of your prowess with your electronics and your understanding of what they look like that other guys were not targeting and saying, I don't know where my fish went, where you were able to say, hey, that's a fish. I can see the bottom separation. And that literally just came down to you spending time up north, spending time this last year in the opens, being able to say that's a fish that 99% of the field would not even cast to or recognize.
Yeah, absolutely. This tournament to me felt just like Eufaula, Oklahoma. Really? when you're trying to do this whole scoping thing with all the trash fish, I felt like I was at Eufaula, Oklahoma. Just how much of an advantage you have knowing what a bass looks like when you have just all that noise, all that, you know, carp, drum, catfish, just knowing what a bass looks like and how a bass, you know, I guess swims in the water column, I guess you could say. That definitely gives you a big advantage if you're able to do that.
What percentage of fish would at least acknowledge your presentation? Like, so I'm trying to get percentages here. So, you know, that first day, like caught 6, 8 bites, pretty much we're looking at one. Are we talking about 20 fish that you have that you're like, oh, it sees it? Are we oh, it's dancing around it? Like what percentage would even acknowledge it?
There would be, I mean, I had a very large percentage.
So you were on point for 8 hours then?
Yes.
Like you were like, eat it.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, this lake reminds me a lot of Leech Lake. I mean, just how smart the fish are, but there's really big fish all over the place. It really reminds me of Leech, you know, my home lake. But yeah, I mean, I had one follow my jerkbait on day one. I promise you it was a double digit. It nipped it twice.
Like you felt it?
yeah, I'd go to jerk, and he just barely had it, and he gets all hot on it again, does it again, and then he finally spooks and swims away. I mean, yeah, I mean it's just it's I don't know why they're so smart out there. I mean, I don't think it's like the case like Leech Lake where it's just a plethora of food. Maybe it is. I don't know, but I really don't know. It's really interesting.
When you see those big ones come up behind a jerk bait, Easton, do you think, you've got your bait there, and I mean, it looks like you're like, how is the fish not on there? Do you think those fish are mouth closed coming up and inspecting it? Do you think they're swimming past it? What do you have you ever seen one like under the water on what it looks like when you've got one on the leash like that? Like, is he trying to eat it? Do you think is that fish down there going, something just isn't right? Is it swimming past it? Is it trying to eat it and missing it?
At the house, I've got to see smallmouth like play games with it. They'll like get, they put their head right next to it and just kind of swim by it, like almost like they're playing with it.
Really?
I don't know if that's what largemouth do too, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's lots of times where they get hot on your jerkbait and they just swim by it, not even trying to eat it, just kind of, toying with it, I guess.
All right, day 2, you come in with one of the biggest bags in Bassmaster Classic history, 29 pounds, 6 ounces, and you go from third place to all of a sudden you have an 8.5-pound lead going into the final day of the Bassmaster Classic. That 29-pound bag, you had to know coming in, that drive from Ray Roberts to you had to know, like, dude, I'm going to be leading this tournament going into the final day, right?
Yeah, I had a pretty dang good feeling. I mean, regardless, I knew I had a real shot to win this thing at that point when I was driving back to Tulsa. But yeah, that was a dream day, really. I started where I caught him day 1 in that creek, and it just was not happening. I caught a 4.5 and a 2-pound spot, and yeah, I just wasn't seeing what I needed to see. There was no shad around, no nothing, just no activity. And I ended up getting out of there about 9:30. Went to one of my other areas that the wind was blowing in too hard on day 1, so I couldn't go to it. And from then on, it was lights out. Like, I got onto him pretty quick, and made some key adjustments. It was sunny and glass calm day 2. So I caught them on the bottom day 1, and day 2 they were literally on the surface, like to the point where I'm pretty dang sure they would have eaten a frog. Like, I took my frog rod out the day after day 1, which I'm kind of upset about. Like, I mean, inches under the surface.
Do you think they were like pre-spawners that were sunning? Like, I've heard that too. Like, sometimes they float right before they go up and get on beds. So you're looking at your forward-facing sonar and you're seeing something right under the surface of the water.
Yeah.
You think those are big females? Why do they do that? They seem they tend to do that in this neck of the woods, so to speak.
I guess, I don't know. I thought, yeah, I mean, they got to be sunning, I think, just, taking in the heat. I thought, I don't know. I mean, I caught the first one roaming on a jerkbait. It was just hauling on the surface. And I was like, on the Coosa River around here, that's what the big spots and big largemouth do. They just swim so fast. And I saw that. I picked up the jerkbait, and, she just ignited on it and ate it. It was a almost 7-pounder. And that's what really got on the deal. That was the only one I actually caught roaming, though. Everything else was just, extremely high on all the trees and that sort of thing, all the structure. But yeah, I mean, it was really cool once I dialed it in. I was throwing a 3/32 Nico all week, except for that day when it got really calm. I downsized to a 1/32, and you had to be so stealthy. I mean, they were sitting literally like 6 inches to 2 feet under the surface. And if you landed that worm too loud on the surface on top of them, they spooked and you wouldn't catch them. Like, you had to land that thing so quietly. And then just, you'd, even with a 1/32, I was shaking the worm as it fell, so it fell even slower. And they would just come up, and all of a sudden just tick. Like, they would just, they wouldn't like come up and just smash it or anything. They'd sit there and look at it for quite some time before they'd grab it. So it was, once I got dialed in on that deal on that day, I got, it was game on, but it took a little while to kind of get zoned in on it.
All right. I mentioned we were going to talk about the bait. I want to just kind of get through all 3 days, and then we'll jump into the baits there. There's that Strike King Perfect Plastic trick worm, a 1/0 Ryogi hook, and the nail weight in there. So we'll get back to that. I didn't want to think we were kind of glossing that over. One of the things that just occurred to me, looking at these standings, you said it was a perfect day. We talked about how this would probably set the record for the heaviest weight leading into this event. Had the conditions been ideal, Easton, you had that 29.6 on day 2. Was the potential there to where you could have weighed in 90 pounds over 3 days? Could this classic, had the wind, had the conditions actually set up just a bit better, could it have been a 90-pound classic?
If it was sunny and glass calm every day, the weights would have definitely been up. 90 pounds is pretty insane.
That's 30 a day. I mean, he had 76.15. That's another 13 pounds.
No, I'm gonna say it would be low 80s probably if it was sunny and calm every day.
You're 22. You've got an 8.5 pound lead. You've got all the cameras in your face. You've got literally all the pressure on you in the world heading into that final day. Did you feel it? Were you enjoying the moment going into that final morning? What was running through your head?
It was comforting to have an 8-pound lead, but on a lake like that, I knew I was far from safe. I had to do my job again. But I was surprisingly calm, honestly. I knew it was one of those deals. If it was meant to be, it would happen, and I wasn't going to be able to stop it. So I guess I was just reminding myself all day just to all you can do is work hard, and you'll get your bites if it's meant to be. So, and that's what I was able to comfort myself with.
Did you know how close it was when you only had 4 with less than an hour to fish? Did you think you were behind? Did you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose this classic and blow an 8? Like, were there demons in your head, or was it a quiet confidence? Because quite frankly, you come across as a guy who never doubts himself, quiet confidence, doesn't feel nerves. The moment's never too.
Here's the thing. Day 1 or the last day, I caught a 4 something on a jerkbait, my first fish. And I don't think they showed it on live, but right after that, I lost one right about 7 at the boat. And, that was the moment where I had those demons in my head, like, you might have just lost the classic. And, that thought really came back when I have 4 fish. I could have had a 7-pounder in the box with it. And, that probably would have won me the tournament. And, I had 4 fish for quite some time having that thought go through my head. And, it's 130, 4 fish for about 14 pounds.
Was that 1 second? Is that so? Chase Sanson, 118 photo gallery out on Bassmaster. He followed you throughout the day. An incredible, incredible championship day gallery. I want to give Chase a massive shout out for the angles and the photos he was able to get without getting in your way. The video, the live stuff is great. A freaking picture lives forever. And there's a couple pictures that I have blown up that Chase took that are in this gallery on bassmaster.com that I want to talk to you about. But when you mentioned that, I went through all 118. So I'm assuming, walk me through. So there's the 4 that you caught right there, right?
Yep.
How long after do you hook up on this fish?
5 minutes.
I mean, there he is. You got him. You don't have him.
Yep. And that was a tough moment for me, and where I knew how much that fish would have meant, as a confidence booster for one, and that was the kicker bite I knew I needed to put myself over the edge, and for it to come off, that was, I'm usually very good about turning a fish loss into a positive very quickly, just realizing that I did something good to ignite that fish. Let's go out there and get another one. But that one really hurt me.
What did you do right here? You're bent over, your hands are on your knees, your bite. I mean, what over the last 5 years of your fishing career did you learn that was able for you to bounce back from that, and that be a part of your classic story and not the end of your classic story?
I just, there was 5 minutes of me like, oh man, that was it. I lost it. And then, I was able to just, come over that and just realize like I did something right to ignite that fish. Let's just work hard and let's go get another one. So that's what I was able to do. Did you lose
another one right after that too? Because it looks like you're hooked up there, and then there's another one where you're like, oh crap.
I don't think I lost another one. It wasn't big, because it wasn't big if I did.
Anyway, as you scroll through the gallery. So it seems like with the conditions on day 4, it was more like day 1 where those fish they were not bitey.
Right. No, they were, especially in that area right there. I was right by Lee, and there's a lot of big ones there on day 3, and I only got those 2 to bite, and every other one I would throw my worm over them, and they would come up and get so close I couldn't see my worm anymore, and they just would not grab it, and then they just swim off and go on their way. But it was very hard to finally come to the decision to leave all these big fish because I can't get them to bite and go try to find other ones. That was because you always hear people say don't ever leave fish to find fish, but I tend to go against that norm all the time. That's something that I do a lot, is leave fish
Really?
that are big to go find more big fish. Yeah, I do that all the time.
And you're saying that that's a strength of yours?
Yeah. I mean, I had a couple tricks up my sleeve that were working all week. I'd throw a jerk bait. If that wouldn't work, I had 2 different weight Nico rigs. If that wouldn't work, I'd throw a jig at them. And if they didn't bite any of those things for me, and then I would leave. So that's what I did there. I tried every trick that had been working for me all week on those fish. It just would not work. And, ultimately I ended up leaving because I had enough confidence that I'll be able to find, another zone of big ones that, I was able to do so. And, it paid off.
How many minutes did you have left to fish when you caught the 8-pounder?
It was at 2:35, I think. And I probably had 20 minutes of fishing left after.
Okay. You never know. Like sometimes, Bassmaster at all, they're right. You get a last second catch. They really make it a last second catch. Have you watched the replay where Zona's like, hold on.
Oh, yeah,
and they fly
yeah,
up?
yeah.
Like, what is that like watching yourself do that with Mark Zona and Tommy Sanders up there making that call? Like, it's got to be impossible to watch that without smiling.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, my personality to act like that on camera, something crazy happened. I'm a very quiet person. And like I said, I keep to myself. And even my camera guy was like, that meant something to you, didn't it? Because he's been with me quite a few days now, and he knows how I am. And for me to act like that, that fish catch, I knew there's a really good chance that fish catch will change my life for sure.
Yeah. All right. So back to the gallery. So this is literally 1 second before. Was that fish pegged? Was it hooked well? Did you know like this thing?
Oh yeah, it was in the it was down deep, way down.
So right here, at this point in your life, you do not know that you're the Bassmaster Classic champion. At this point in your life, you do. What? I mean, that's the fact. I mean, you want to see a life-changing moment in stills. There it is, right there. Do you remember getting your hand around the lower jaw of that fish and saying, "She's mine. I just won the Bassmaster freaking Classic"?
Oh yeah, I remember it very clearly, and I always will. I mean, I don't think I'll ever beat that fish catch in my life. Just how much it means to me, and that picture shows it.
Yeah, so there it is. You're hollering, which I think that. Have you ever yelled before in your life like that while fishing?
No.
And then this was the iconic image right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember doing that? Oh
yeah, I do. And in that moment, it was really cool. The past 2 years of my life just flew through my head right there. It was
like really flashback cool stuff on the water.
Yes. 2 years just flew through my head in 10 seconds in that moment. It was a really cool moment for sure.
I know that's a personal thing. Like what type of stuff flew through your head? Like, are we talking about the individual people, individual moments, the medical stuff?
It was the medical stuff, the bracket, the opens. It was all that. It was probably like 5 seconds where all that flew through my head. Just, it was like, when you watch movies, it's just like this person has flashbacks and everything.
Yeah, they do like a montage.
Yes, that's exactly what's going on in my head right there. It was really cool what happened right there.
Did it seem, you talk about the top athletes, like, and I think we all have fish catches that are just burned into our memory, regardless of how many years ago it was. Did this whole sequence take place to you in slow motion?
Yeah.
Like, can you remember every single detail of this and this and this and this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember everything that happened in that moment, except what I said. I don't remember that. But everything that happened, every fish jump, I mean, yeah, that's all engraved in my head.
That's badass. I know I said like 30, 35 minutes. We're at 36 now. Do you got a couple more to go through the baits real quick?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Let's take a deep dive into this type of stuff. I noticed, and I don't have a video of this pulled up, I noticed that when it came to working your Nico rig, you're a rod down guy, not a rod up guy.
Yep. And that's mostly due to the wind. If I have my rod up, the wind blows my line all over the place, and then I don't have the correct feel of the bait like I would if the rod's down.
Let's talk about the actual worm. How'd you pick that? Why go with the red bug color? Anything? I mean, Strike King makes 5 different types of stick worms, from the perfect plastics to the filler to an ocho to a 4.5 inch to all sorts of stuff. Talk about why that worm is your Nico worm of choice.
I guess for me, the water in Ray Roberts is normally pretty clear from my understanding, but the wind had it pretty stirred up. It was relatively dirty. And this worm has a bulky enough profile to where, I think I felt like it would get their fish's attention, but, with that tail, it's also got the action that you need, to get them to bite. So, and that color was just the color I felt, stood out the most in the watercolor. It's kind of like a green stain. But yeah, I mean, it was just, honestly, it was the first color I picked up in practice and just started
and it
getting
works.
on it.
So screw it. I'll just roll with it.
Yeah. I mean, it just kept working. So I never put it down basically. So, but I just felt like it was the best color for that watercolor that we were dealing with.
A lot of different Nico weights out there. Anything specific about the 332nd or the 132nd that you think was key, or was it a chunk of lead? Is it tungsten?
The ones I was using was tungsten, just the ones that you stick into the bait. But yeah, nothing too crazy about that. Just varying the weight size with the wind speed, for the fall rate, and also being able to cast accurately was key. It was very tedious. I'd really have to study the tree to figure out where exactly the fish was sitting, and then I would have to look at the tree and look at the limbs, because I was using a spinning rod, so you don't want your bait to be over any limbs when you get in there. There's many times where I would put the raptors down on a tree, figure out where the fish was, pull the raptors up, swing around the tree, put the raptors back down. I mean, it was a process for sure to get the exact presentation that I needed to get these ones to bite, for one, and also to get them out of the trees. So it was, like I said, very tedious.
Yeah. So I'm showing up. I need to get Chase on the show. I know that Mercer always does Jake's take, which is awesome. I feel like Chase is probably going to already be booked up, but this might be, and I say that in all due respect, with Sego and Overstreet and the great photographers of the President Pass with Bass, but this is a top 5 day 3 classic gallery. But that's a perfect example of those trees. Those are not fishing friendly trees.
Oh, no.
Those are not like old slick hardwoods. It doesn't look like those. It looks like those are line grabbing trees with a lot of different channels in them that the line can get behind very easily, and then a lot of like basket underwater stuff that those fish can get caught in.
Yeah, it's gnarly for sure. And yeah, like I said, there's a lot of times I'd put the raptors down, I'd look at a tree for 1-2 minutes before I'd even make a cast, just studying where exactly the fish is sitting. And then I would, look at the actual tree itself, look at the branches and just really plan out my cast. Cause you get a 7-pounder to bite in that tree. And your line's over a limb, you're screwed with a spinning rod setup. So there were times where you think you could have cast and hooked a 7-pounder, but you said not yet. So you stalked, hunted, watched that fish until it moved to a position where you're like, okay, I can get this sucker out now. Yeah, absolutely. It was every fish, that I would see, it was yeah, like you said, I was basically stalking it, just waiting for my opportunity. And, if she was just sitting there, like I said, I'd reposition the boat to the other side of the tree or to an angle where I could get to her.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that on the nail weight, though, you pushed it all the way through the worm. There's a lot of guys that leave a little bit of that nail weight sticking out, or they use a screw. And do you think it's important that you that the nose of that bait was plastic as far as affecting the fall or anything, or is it just such a small weight that in order to keep it in the worm, you have to push it all the way in?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just such a small weight. I just put it all the way in there.
Do you have one there? Are you holding one?
Yeah.
Well, why didn't you hold that up to the screen a long time ago? Okay, so that one's on the outside right there.
This one's a football style weight.
Okay.
Okay. I used this on the super windy day on day one.
Okay, but on the rest, then the one that I showed, it was, or maybe you just didn't have a weight in there. And then show how you attach the hook, why you choose that hook, and how important is it, the hook positioning as far as how it goes into the worm.
So how I attach it to the worm, it's the Nico hack. Who makes it? I think G-Crack.
Is it Zapu or G-Crack?
I think G-Crack makes this one, but that's, I use a lot of really thin diameter worms, and any O-rings or anything just, slides off no matter how small a one you get. So this is what I've really kind of started depending on. And, as you can see, I usually tend to go a little bit more towards the weight than in the middle of the worm. I really don't know why. I think that gives a little more room for the tail to really quiver. And, the hook I was using is the biggest key to everything. I've always been a huge, fan of the Talisman hook from Ryugi, but this is the heavy guard version. It's actually the first time I ever used it this week. And with this, these metal prongs are super stiff, like really stiff. And I could literally, if I made a bad cast and threw this in the middle of the tree, all you have to do is kind of feather it out and it'll never get hung. And, obviously that helps so much with efficiency. You'd be breaking baits off all week if you didn't have that, like, bad.
Yeah.
So that helped a bunch. And with that heavy weed guard, all you have to do is it's more of a snappy hook set. It's not just reeling into them. You just got to kind of snap and just jerk on them a little bit more. So
most of them buried in the top of the mouth with that. I mean, that's like when that hook is like a hybrid of about 3 different actual hook shapes. But when that thing buries, it grabs them.
Yeah, it gets them good. Yeah. I mean, I won both my opens last year on this hook and now the classic. So I've never had more confidence in a hook. I don't think. Are
you sponsored by them, or is that just a hook you use?
No, I'm sponsored by them now.
Okay.
I wasn't last year, but I am now.
How many over the past year, how many times have you just had a phone call, an email, or a text, and it's someone that's like, hey, we want to give you money. We know you're using our stuff. And is that still pretty cool?
Yeah, it's super cool to have that happen. Yeah.
I remember talking to some other young guys that were like, dude, like one dude, he's like, dude, I literally just spent like $1,500 on their stuff and my phone rings. And he's like, hey, like, we see you're ordering a bunch of stuff. Like, we'd love for you to join the team. We had no idea. And he was like, oh, that would have been helpful about 20 minutes ago. Line, the fluoro to braid, talk about that component, because like, dude, you had to winch on some of these fish. It didn't look like it was a light line setup.
It was lighter than a lot of people would think. I stuck with my 8-pound braid I always use. I feel like
8-pound braid.
8-pound braid.
I see all the good guys use ultralight braid, and it's still, I feel like the average schmucks like me, I'm still 12 and 16-pound braid. But like, dude, the finesse masters, which you are, always the 8-pound braid.
Yeah, I feel like if I upsize, I lose my castability and my accuracy. I just need it to flow so smoothly when I'm trying to cast accurately. And I feel like if I upsize the braid, I lose that accuracy. But what I did do is the 8-pound braid to a 17-pound fluorocarbon leader. That's what I beefed up, was the leader.
17. What knot could you use that would actually get those to meld together well?
I don't know what it's called. You make a loop with the fluoro, 5 wraps down, 5 wraps back up through the loop.
Okay. Yeah.
What is that? I don't know.
I know that's the only. Yeah, I know what you're talking about though. And you just make sure that it's nicely on top of each other, and then you have, one tag end.
Yeah, when it kind of cinches, it just
your fluoro though is like sticking out of the tag end that you cast, and if you don't clip it right, it's a nightmare. But if you clip it right, It kicks
Right.
ass.
Another thing I do with that knot is
Alberto knot.
yeah. Another thing I do with that knot is just like you said, I cut the fluoro extremely close, like as close as I possibly can. But what I do is I leave the braid a little bit of gap, like just a little bit of a tag end on there, so that allows the knot to slip a little bit if it needs to without breaking.
Are you a guy who believes that the colored line, the colored braid,
I always use yellow braid, yellow or green.
Almost like an indicator in salmon fishing, to where you can see when it stops, where it is, that type of thing?
You can watch your line, know if your bait's on bottom, and a lot of times the fish grabs on the bottom. You can also see that, so it just gives you you just know what your bait's doing at all times with that line.
What line?
I use the Strike King Tour Grade Brian braid. I absolutely love that stuff. And then I was using Seagar Gold Label leader.
2,500 size reel. It looks like, it doesn't look like a giant spool reel.
It's a 3,000 or
it is a 3. It is a bigger spool. Does that help just with castability, line management? You can pack it on.
Yep.
And then run through the rod. I know that's a critical component of this.
Yeah, the rod is a 7-foot medium Lose Elite. I have never been more obsessed with a rod in my life. I don't think. I use it for all my minnows, Nico, drop shot. Like, that's the rod. I think I have like a dozen of them now. Like, I have so many of them. I mean, it's literally the most.
Pretty sure you'll have however many you want at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most like versatile rod I've ever found, and it's. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm obsessed with it, and it's got the perfect tip, straight into backbone. You can do so much with it. And yeah, having that shorter rod, it seems like every year I go shorter and shorter with my rods, just because it allows you to be so accurate, whether you're target fishing or, using your forward facing sonar, you need to be accurate. So 7 foot to 6'10" has been my happy medium as of late in my spinning rods.
You also, okay. Oh, you mentioned this. So did you try to put a minnow on them? I know that some of those fish came, like, was that something that you tried, or what was it that you went jerkbait Nico instead of a minnow, which you can shake like a Nico, but has the drawing powers and reaction bite of a jerkbait?
I did try minnow a little bit in practice, but it was pretty apparent pretty early that was not going to be the deal. It just did not get them fired up like I needed them to be. And also there's just, you can't do the weed guard type deal with the minnow. Like, I mean, you cast the minnow along these trees and you get hung so much. And it just wasn't the most efficient way to do it. So
It's also funny to me. So this is second year in a row that a unnamed jerkbait has been a player in the Bassmaster Classic. And I mean, I think since the days of the Rogue, I mean, we saw, well, you didn't because you were 3, but we saw Van Dam throwing, that old Rogue in the 2005 Pittsburgh Classic. But it's amazing to me, the more this generation of anglers that I get into, like, the old guys would be like I say old school. I want to say like the generation before were very protective about, like maybe a specific top water. Like, hey, don't name the Vixen. Don't want that to get out. This generation, fiercely protective. Like, some guys won't even let you look through their stuff of your jerkbait boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know you're a Strike King guy, and last year Hamner was a Yozuri guy, but dude, everything is live now. Everything has cameras now. The fact of the matter is, the jerkbait boxes, if you're under 30, you got a lot of tricks up your sleeve when it comes to the jerkbait boxes, Easton. I mean, it's pretty impressive to see all the different brands. And the cool thing is, you got a lot of Japanese stuff, American stuff, weighted stuff, old stuff, deep bill, shallow bill, floaters, different colors, repainted, special painted, hooks on it that some slow sink, some float. Like, the jerkbait is in my opinion the only bait that is still a secret in guys' boxes, where they go out and you say, I've got something that a fish will bite that won't bite someone else who's throwing, quote, the same thing. Is that a fair breakdown of jerkbait fishing in 2025?
It absolutely is. And you alluded to just how many different things you can do to vary a jerkbait and how it fishes. The hooks, there's suspend strips, there's even float strips now. I mean, there's just so much you can do to a jerkbait to mean, make yourself different than the boat next to you. So yeah, definitely jerkbait is where all the secrets lie.
Yeah. Clay brings up a great point. He said jerkbaits have dominated the Classic since Cherry popped this first win at Gunnersville. And, you go back to like when Scott Martin was one of the early guys who figured out what you could do, with looking at fish on the forward facing sonar, and Hank Cherry. And a number of those guys had that in their back pocket for the better part of 2 or 3 years before it started to pit. And they put clinics on with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to think how many fish I weighed on jerkbait. I think it's only like 4 over the 15, but still.
Yeah, 30 your fish. Run through your jerkbait rod setup though, because that is something that I think a lot of guys struggle with, specifically because you still have to be accurate. You have to have something that allows that bait to move naturally, but you also are casting that thing in, around, and over trees for giant fish that you have to be able to move.
Yeah, my jerkbait setup was, I always use a loose custom light. It's a 610. I think it's a medium heavy, maybe medium. I can't remember, but it was with a custom pro reel. I had the thing I did with being in Texas around the trees. I did 17-pound fluoro. I really didn't care as much about the action of the bait. I just wanted to be able to, kind of lean on them a little bit to make sure I get them out if they did bite. But, a lot of things, when I would throw the jerkbait out there, they would follow the jerkbait obviously, but a lot of them wouldn't commit. So, what I did more with the jerkbait, even more than catching them, I would lure them out of the tree so I could snipe them with the Nico rig.
How many of the fish did you lure out of the tree that you caught on the Nico? Out of the 15 that you weighed in? Because that's pretty cool.
I would say 3 or 4 out of the ones I weighed in.
Like, that's a third of your fish, Easton.
Maybe not that. I don't remember. Day 2, I caught every one of them just strictly on Nico, but the first 2 days I was able to do that a little bit with the wind.
We're wrapping up this interview because I know you got to go. I greatly appreciate you giving me 50 minutes of your time. But if you don't listen to this interview and hear someone who is dialed in on a level that none of us will ever be dialed in at, dude, that's cool just to kind of get inside it. You had so many different layers. It wasn't go up to a tree, make a cast, and see if one swims out and eats it. In fact, that was the furthest thing from the truth. If you were to just go up to a tree and make a cast at it, you'd have caught 1 or 2 fish, or maybe double zeroed.
There was dudes in every one of my areas. Like, I was covered in boats all week, but just like you said, I was, I guess, locked in at another level, I guess, dialed into another level, I guess you could say. So I guess that's what I did to kind of separate myself. I was just, another level dialed in than most of my competitors.
I do have one more question. It was the 2-dayer at Leech when you weighed in 26.5 pounds on the first day. You had the live camera. You had all of Minnesota behind you. You were expected to win this tournament. You knew this was a tournament that you planned on winning it, or not you, maybe. Everyone else planned on you winning this tournament. Was there any pressure that you felt in that event that helped you handle it in this event? Because there were some parallels between those two.
Yeah, I think so. It's funny, both events went pretty much the exact same way. I had really tough mornings both of those final days, at Leech and in the Classic. So I guess, yeah, it did kind of help me, stay composed and just know that, just know if you work hard all day, your opportunities will come. I guess that's kind of where I was at with that. But now that you say that, it is funny how both those wins really kind of worked their way out the same exact way, how I had really tough mornings all day right until the last minute.
Did you ever try putting dice, that type of stuff on these fish at Ray Roberts?
No, there's no way with the wind you'd be able to cast that little thing out there.
I was just curious. Dale Johnson, he said, congrats. He goes, I was your practice marshal at Grand Lake. He said he knew it was just a matter of time. Did this help that you had made a Classic before, that this wasn't your first Classic, that you knew how it was going to go down?
Oh yeah, it helped so much with the nerves. In the first Classic, I could feel how nervous I was, and obviously it's hard to make decisions when you're that nervous. So the nerves were definitely toned down at this one, and it helped a lot for sure.
All right. Anything else? Anything else you want to get in here before I let you go?
I don't think so, man.
All right. Congratulations. I know you've got a lot of people that were really pumped for your win. I think there were riots in the streets of every small town in Minnesota. Fiercely proud of that bass fishing community up there. I've gotten to taste a little bit of it with the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic that goes down in Wabasha. Those guys love their bass fishing, and they love the guys from Minnesota. Have you talked to Seth yet?
I mean, he shot me a text when I won saying like, hell yeah, dude, congrats. That sort of thing. Pretty cool.
But first Minnesotan to win the Bassmaster Classic. And I mean, dude, you can tell like just from the post and the guys talking, like they feel like they won that thing with you, man.
Yeah, it's super cool to have all their support. So definitely means the world.
All right, take care. You'll probably lose your voice by this time in 24 hours. So,
well, thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, Easton. I appreciate it. All right. There was just not a natural time to take a commercial break during that interview. Easton Fothergill, 2025 Bassmaster Classic champion. You can run through all the accolades that are on his list: a 2-time Classic qualifier, college bracket champion, Bassmaster EQ 2024 Angler of the Year. He won 2 opens in 3 events, won one on his home pond, had a 26.5-pound bag of smallmouth, caught a 9-pounder on Lake Eufaula to win that one to qualify for last year's Grand Lake Classic. Got this whole thing started back in 2023 where they finished 5th in the national championship. Interestingly enough, Tucker Smith, who's currently on the Elite Series, he was a big part of that. He won that, went to the bracket, edged out Tucker Smith in that bracket, kind of got into that whole system with the dynamic sponsorship and how they take care of that Bassmaster Classic bracket champion to prepare him not only for the Classic, but to get him into the Opens. Top 10's his first Open down in Florida, off to the races. So we are going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up, and then don't go away, because this show originally had Mark Jeffries, who has been around for 21 years. And I said, dude, I'm kicking you off of the show you created. I got Easton on at 8:30. So we're going to stop this. So this will be a standalone show with Easton. And then we'll start a brand new stream and bring Mark Jeffries in. We have a lot to talk about from Classic Week, but also some other things to talk about when we come back. But we are going to take a short commercial break here, get some of the sponsors in, then we'll be back and wrap up the Bassmaster Classic Champion Show here on BTL on a Wednesday, March 26th. Pro Bass Adventures is reinventing Mexico bass fishing. With boats equipped with 12-inch Garmin units and LiveScope Plus, free loaner fishing rods, and no-cost airport transportation, Pro Bass Adventures is proudly putting you in the best position for success. Pro Bass Adventures has lodges on Lake Baccarat and Lake El Salto, Mexico's 2 best trophy largemouth bass lakes. Visit probassadventures.com or email probassadventures@gmail.com. The official Mexico fishing lodge of Bass Talk Live.
Beatdown is efficient.
Rock solid.
100% American made. This thing is super tough. I mean, this thing is not going anywhere.
I've ran the Beatdown double stack from Florida all the way up to New York. And the one thing that I know is when I get to my fishing destination, I never have to worry about issues with my graph mount.
Your options are endless with these mounts, but they're steady, they're solid. These are the most reliable mounts on the market, and you can't go wrong with the Beatdown.
When you're ready to hit the water, Denali Fishing has you covered. Regardless of your skill level, from beginner all the way up to tournament pro, Denali has rods, reels, and tungsten to get the job done. Check them out at denalifishing.com.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Top on just plain works. Cast after cast after cast. AFTCO. Any fish, any water.
All right, wrapping things up here on a Wednesday. Big shout out to Easton Fothergill. I said he's working through 500-600 text messages, and I've had him on the show before and talked to him, but I mean, I'm not like buddies with him. Got right back to me, scheduled the time. He said, yes, I'll be available. Answered the text. Everything was perfect. I see some comments in there say that's this dude will be around as long as he wants to be. I totally agree. I would put him like he reminds me also a lot. He doesn't use as big of words, and I don't think he's as tall as Drew Gill, but he reminds me a lot of Drew Gill when it comes to the approach, when it comes to the understanding. You have to remember, you're talking about 22, 23-year-old adults. When they got into this game, they used the tools that they had available. They become the best at them. And Easton and Drew, I think, have a game that is far deeper than most people give them credit to. But the best part of their game isn't what they're looking at on a screen. It's what's happening inside their head. And it's how they break down the information that they can receive from the conditions, from history, from time on the water, from their electronics, from all of that. You cannot duplicate someone's brain and how they understand something and how they process it and then how they apply that. That is unduplicatable. That's why there's 7 billion people with 7 billion different thoughts in the world. You can't point to one thing and say, this is why. It's in their brain. There's a lot of young, talented anglers, but how you take that information, how you process it, and how you apply it in high stress situations where you cannot make a mistake, I think is really cool. And that's what we got. All right. It is not live yet, but every year at this time of year for 2 weeks, and I have a call in with the printing company. We have the shirt designed. It should go live sometime today. If you are watching this replay within like 3 hours of it coming out, probably not, because we're doing Mark Jeffries after that. But if not, click on the link in the bio to purchase, to support, to donate to St. Jude. The Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic in Wabasha, Minnesota is coming up. I've talked about this a million times. That's why I can rattle it off. Raised over $7 million. Fishing it with Adam Bartuzek, $7 million over the time, directly to St. Jude. Every penny goes to St. Jude. This will be the 4th year that we've done the Bass Fishing Save Lives t-shirts through BTL. All of that money goes to the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic, specifically for the team that I am fishing with. We basically have a contest between the 100 teams that fish just to see who can raise the most money for St. Jude. You guys always show out. I saw at least 6 or 7 St. Jude t-shirts at the Bassmaster Classic this past week. You order the t-shirt, it's open for 2 weeks, then they close it down, they print the t-shirt. ATS Printing does a good job of cutting a steep discount on the printing, and that cut a check, it goes straight to St. Jude. So hopefully that link will be out. Later today. I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to refill. Well, I had to try the pink Red Bull. But I'm going to go pour a cup of coffee. I've also got the water here. Hydration is key, folks. I'm going to reset. So this is a standalone show, and another show is going to pop up titled like BTL bonus. Mark Jeffries returns. Jeffries and I had a good, healthy back and forth on the phone the other day, just about the Classic, about professional bass fishing, that type of stuff. And I said, well, yeah, just come on the show. And he said, okay. And then I kicked him off because Easton Fothergill. We'll be back in 10, 15 minutes, something like that. Congrats to Easton Fothergill, your 2025 Bassmaster Classic champion. See ya.